Namaste and good morning, everyone. Let's start our Thursday class with the prayers. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhu Bhavaswaha, Tatsavitra Vareneyam, Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi, Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. Asto ma sadgamya, tamso ma jyotirgamya, mrityorma amritam gamya. Om sehna bhavtu, sehna bhunaktu, seviryam karvavai, tejasvi navadhitamastu, ma vidvishavahi. Om shanti, shanti, shanti. These days we are studying Shvetashvarta Upanishad, and we are on the third chapter, and we are seeing how this Rishi is elaborating on God and God's nature, so that we can understand what God is, because we always are curious about God, who created this, and whom we are part of. What is his nature? So let's look at verse number 9. That's where we're going to start the class today. Yasmat param na aparam nasti kinchit, yasmat na aniha na jyaya asti kaschit, vriksha eva stabdha divi tishtati eka, idam purnam ten purushen sarvam. Yasmat param, that means higher than whom or beyond whom. Yasmat param. Na means nothing, aparam, different than. Asti is kinchit, whatsoever. Yasmat, from whom. Na means not, aniya, subtler. See, like that term anu, anu means small, aniya, subtler. Na means not, jyaya, greater. Asti is kaschit, whatsoever. Second line, vriksha, tree. Iv means like, satabdha, unmoving. Divi, in his own glory. Tishtati, stands or exists. Ekaha, one. Idam, this. Purnam, filled, like a filled by. Ten Purushen, by the divine being. Sarvam, all. So this Rishi is saying all this is filled by the divine being. And who's the divine being? God. All this is filled by the divine being. Higher or different than whom there is nothing else. Subtler or greater than whom there is nothing else. He stands alone in his own glory, unmoving like a tree. This is a very powerful and deeply meaningful verse. Param also means cause, and aparam means effect. In Sanskrit, there are multiple meanings of the same word. Param means superior also, greater also. Param also means the cause. So when we read it with these meanings, cause and effect, that means God has no cause or effect. Because cause always exists before the effect. It means that nothing exists before God. Human beings, in a human body, we say it's our parents. God doesn't have any parents. This is accepted by all religions of the world. So God is not the cause, or there's no other cause for God's existence. So God is neither a cause of anything nor an effect from anything. So nothing exists before him or after him. He is one without a second. That's why it's called the non-dual God alone exists. Yasmanah aniyo na jyotishati. There is nothing greater or smaller than God. Neither the universe, heavens on earth, neither the heavenly beings, we call them devatas, or mortals like us human beings or animals are smaller than him. As why? Because all is him alone. We are just only superimposition on God. There's nothing but him, God. There is a beautiful story to bring this point out. A stranger, he entered into the court of the king. King, after looking at the stranger, became little humble. He got up to receive the guest. But then king saw this stranger walked right up to him and sat on his throne. The king just looked at him and said, "Who are you? Are you a king from another land, dressed in ordinary clothes?" The stranger said, "I am the king of all the kings." Then king said, "Are you the Indra, the king of the heaven?" Stranger said, "I am the god of all gods." Then king said, "But there is nothing greater than God." That saint replied, "I am that nothing which is greater than God. That nothing." So God is beyond all concepts of small or great because all is him alone. Okay? That's the only way we can say that God is everywhere. Because if we think that God is there and something else is there too, this definition of that God is everywhere does not apply. Kan kan mein Bhagwan. Even at the relative plane, God is subtler than space, which exists in the smallest atom. That's why that Vibhuti is mentioned in the Yoga Sutras, that yogi sees in the atom also, or the subatoms also, in the smallest particle also, yogi can go and see, and in the biggest of the biggest also. It can engulf the whole universe. Then he says, Vriksha eva stabdo divitishtya ek. God shines alone in his own glory. God stands immutable alone in all his glory and divinity as pure existence, consciousness, pervading the entire universe. God doesn't need anybody else's glory to shine. It is him alone, his own glory. Usually that which pervades and that which is pervaded are different. Like if we have a carpet on the floor, carpet is spread on the floor. But God pervades the world like the oceanic water. Oceanic water pervades all the waves. Or when we look at the rope, we think it's a snake. That snake is pervading the whole rope. So that's how God is everywhere. God alone exists as the substratum, and the world is merely an appearance. This is what he's trying to tell us. Knowing God bestows immortality, seems like a difficult task. It's very hard to conceive this. What is the alternative? How can we conceive God? Next mantra says, Tataha yad utrataram tad arupam anamyam ya etat vidu amritate bhavanti ath itre dukham ev apiyanti tataha. Tata means then. That means then this world. Yad means that. Utrataram, higher. Again, tad means that. Arupam. See, roop means form. Arup means formless. Anamyam, free from diseases. Anamyam. Ya means who, etat this, vidu knows, amritaha immortal. Te means they, bhavanti become, at means while, itrehe others, dukham sorrow, ev means only, get. That which is higher than this world is formless and free from diseases. Those who know this become immortal, while others get only sorrow. So the very first thing he says, God is formless. Like space, the all-pervading God is formless. See, just like a beauty is the essence of many beautiful objects, but beauty itself is formless. There's no form to the beauty. Just like a love, formless. So subtler the things, the formless they are. God is the one formless essence in all forms. That which is formless alone can assume all forms. See, just like a water takes on the form of a container, whether we put it into a pitcher or whether we put it into a glass, it takes that form. The formless God can assume any form and all forms. That's why in the Hindu temples we see so many different forms, small, big, different colors. God can take any form, but he is formless. God is free from disease. What does it mean? Because diseased God does not fit into anyone's concept of God. We can't even imagine God being diseased. Because of God who is formless, changeless, attributeless, of course, free from diseases. Because body gets diseased, mind gets diseased. Or we all suffer from the spiritual diseases of ignorance also. See, that's what called adhyatmik roga. Or there are adi bhautik rog or adi devik rog. See, adhyatmik rog is out of ignorance. We know ignorance causes desires, which gives rise to actions, which gives results, and the enjoyment of give, which gives the cause for the vasanas or the tendencies, and they again give desires, and from desires more actions. So it's like a cycle continues. So the cycle goes on of ego, selfishness, anger, greed, jealousy, etc. And that's where the pain comes. The cause of the pain is all of this. Sometimes we call that pain anxiety or tension, fear, depression. God doesn't have any of it. Okay. his immortality of the seekers who know God as their immortal nature gain infinite bliss. The ignorant ones remain immersed in sorrow. Okay, if you want to remove the sorrow, remove the ignorance. Ignorance about who you are. There is no real joy in this finite world. We should remember that. This should be our mantra. Na alpe sukham asti. Alp means small. Na alpe sukham asti. No matter how much addition and multiplication of the finite numbers we do, it will still give a finite result. And we are part of the infinite. Infinite can never be satisfied with the finite. That is the bottom line. That's why a person living in an apartment wanted a house. Still, there was not happiness. Worked hard to get a bigger house in a better location. Still not happiness. Then into a mansion. Or even bigger than that. People want to go to moon or the Mars. For what? They think they can get happiness. This is all alpa. It's all finite. Na alpe sukham asti. How can a man who's the inheritor of trillions be happy with a few hundreds? We are part of God. We are part of that infinite. In the next mantra also, this Rishi is giving us a glimpse of the cosmic form of God. And this reminds us of Bhagavad Gita also. Sarv Anan Shirogriva, Sarvabhut Guhashya, Sarvavyapi Sa Bhagwan, Tasmat Sarvagata Shiva, Sarv Anan Shirogriva. Griva is the neck, Shir is the head, Anan means the faces. Who has all the faces, heads and necks? Sarvabhut Guhashya, who resides in the core of all beings. It's hidden there in all the beings. Because if he's everywhere, that means in all the beings. Sarvavyapi, all pervading. No place where he is not. So means he, Bhagwan, the Lord. Tasmat, therefore, Sarvagata, omnipresent, Shiva, auspicious. The Lord who has all the faces, heads and necks, who resides in the core of all beings, is all pervading and therefore omnipresent and auspicious. There are stages of manifestation. God in his immaculate and absolute nature is nameless, attributeless and formless. Nirgun, nirakar. And generally referred to as Brahma, because when we say Brahma, that really means Nirgun, Nirakar. But when we associate with his infinite and inscrutable potential power, which is called Maya or Prakriti, he is called Ishwar. As a Ishwar, he becomes a Sagun also. So there comes a manifestation of the total mind or the subtle world, and God is associated with the total mind and the intellect, then we call it a Hiranyagarabha. Then it becomes a Saguna Sakara. From this subtle state emerges the entire gross world of names and forms, the cosmic form of God, which Arjuna envisioned with the grace of his Guru, Lord Krishna. That was a Virat Rupa. Even though God is formless, but God can take that big form also, which is everywhere. There's no end to it. That's why Arjuna said, I cannot see the beginning or the end or the middle. All I see is the radiance. Like thousands of suns are blazing at the same time. That was a Virat Rupa. The countless cosmoses and all attributes like powers and knowledge are manifested in that cosmic form. That's why Arjuna saw everybody is going in there. The Devatas, the Siddhs, they are praising the Lord. The others, they are afraid of it. God also manifests in the specific forms as incarnations, which are called avatars. At different times, out of compassion for the devotees. There are asankhya avatars have been in the past also, present also, in the future also. Asankhya avatars. Lord Krishna said, I come again and again. Sure, we are more familiar with Shri Krishna, Lord Ram, and some others. Those are the famous incarnations of God. It is difficult for most to comprehend Brahma, Ishwar, Hiranyagarabha, or Virat. Whereas the beautiful forms of God incarnate, we can really find peace there. Because we look at the divine work which God does. There are elevating teachings. It becomes easy when we go through those leelas of God. That's why God comes again and again, so that we can understand, fall in love with God. Sarv Anand Shirogriva. That means he is all faces, heads and necks. So that means we are all familiar with the necks and the heads, faces. So after reading this, we should see God in all the beings. If we see God in the person we are talking to, if we understand this mantra properly, can we label people then as bad or ugly? Or our enemies? No, it's impossible when we see God in them. Is not the person we see, it's just extension of us. God is in us, God is in the person in front of us. That's what Sant Tulsidas ji said. He said, Siya Ram, because Ramchandra ji was Tulsidas ji's Ishta. So he said, Siya Ram me sab jag jane, karu pranam jore jug pane. Sab, in all. He says, I see the entire world as Lord Shri Ram, and I bow down to all with the folded hands. Wherever I go, whomever I see, all I see is Lord Ram. We may understand this mantra intellectually, but it's not easy to get this divine vision. Because After understanding intellectually, we got to look at the deeper meanings of these verses. Anan. Anan also means mouth through which we enjoy food. So that's why this Anan represents the power to enjoy, the Bhog Shakti. And the head symbolizes the power of knowledge, Gyan Shakti. And Griva or the neck supports the head, represent the power that supports, which is called a Adhar Shakti. So Adhar Shakti is God. Bhog Shakti, Are Gyan Shakti. See God everywhere. That's why when we eat food also, we see God in the food. When we walk outside, we see the God there. No matter what we do, God, nothing but God. God's nature of existence, consciousness, bliss manifests in the world and all beings as the power that supports, gives existence, knows, and enjoys. Then another term he used in this verse is Bhagwan. This is a beautiful word, Bhagwan. Very commonly used for God by the Hindus. That means one with the Bhag. Bhagwan. See, just like a Dhanwan, the one who has a Dhan is a Dhanwan. One who has a Bhag, that's a Bhagwan. That means fortune. There are 6 kinds of fortunes which are associated with Bhagwan. The lordship, the righteousness, the fame, the wealth, the knowledge, and the dispassion. These are the 6 bhags. And God has all these in infinite measure. There's no limitation to it. These divine powers are the very nature and not qualities which come and go, increase or decrease. See, in us, the qualities come and then next time we see that we don't have that quality. With one person, we have it, another person we don't. With God, it's not like that. Same with everybody. The Lord's lordship is not because someone elected him to that power. He is the very embodiment of all virtues. His fame is such that his mere remembrance purifies our hearts. Remember God, that's all we have to do. But the sad part is, even when we are remembering God, we say that we are remembering God, we are remembering only what we need from God. We are not remembering God. Remembering God only. He is the world with all its wealth and knowledge. Knowing all and being all is still untouched. And beyond all, this is his dispassion. Anyone in the world who has a little of these, even a minuscule of these qualities, is called fortunate. We call people like that, who is famous or who has wealth or who has some knowledge or who has some dispassion or who we see the Lord or who is very righteous. We say they are very fortunate. When we understand that God's divine powers, we don't become proud of our wealth. When we know that he is the owner of all it, he is the giver of all this, then we don't become proud. Or we don't become envious of others' fame or others' wealth. that God is all pervading, auspicious, the self of all self. This is how we should understand this. What does God do seated within us? Because if he's seated in the heart of all of us, what does he do? The next mantra for that. Mahan Prabhu ve Purushaha Satvase Eshaha Parvartakaha Su Nirmalam Imam Praptim Ishanaha Jyoti Avyaha. Mahan, great, Prabhu, Lord. Ve, indeed, Purushaha, Satvasya hai, of Satav. Eshaha, this, Parvartakaha, prompted. So Nirmalam, pure state. See, Nirmal is pure, but so Nirmal. See, just like this place where the Atma is, we call it a Vishuddha. Shuddha means pure, Vishuddha, extremely pure. So this is a so Nirmal. Imam, this Prapti, attainment. Ishanaha, the ruler. Jyoti, the light. Avyaha, great Lord, Purusha. The prompter of Satav in order to help us. Because God is always there to help us. So indeed, this great Lord, the Purush, the prompter of Sattva, in order to help us attain the pure state, is the ruler, the light over here, light of consciousness, and immutable. So God is great. We often say that, Mahan. God is great in every respect. God is great as he is the Lord of all the fortunes. He is great in knowledge. He is great in stature. He is great in power, in virtues, everything worthwhile. He is great. That's why we call him Prabhu, Master. He is all capable, independent to do, undo, or do otherwise. Nothing is impossible for him. He is full and complete. That also means Mahan. Therefore, without desires, capable of fulfilling all the desires. We, on the other hand, as human beings, we feel incomplete. More the desires we have, the more incomplete we feel. Because that's why we have the desires. Closer you get to the completeness, the fewer desires you'll have. Remember this formula. If you want to really check yourself, check how many desires you have. Desire, any kind of a desire, just look at it, make a list of the desires you have. The longer the list, farther you are. So we feel incomplete because we are full of desires. And we have very little capacity to fulfill them. I even hear from people that, oh, life is not long enough to do all. How incomplete we feel when we say that. Being so great, capable, and complete, no wonder he is respected and worshipped. That's why we call him Mahan, or this. Rishi is starting this verse with Mahan Prabhu. And then he inspires us also. That's why we want to be in the company of God. That's why we have altars in our home, or we have the temples in our society, so that we can get inspired. But what do we do with those temples? We got to look within. Our own names are God's name. Are we reducing our desires when we go to the temple, or are we increasing our desires? Because God is inspiring us, Satavsa, Esha Parvartaka. He wants to remain with us. He wants to prompt the Satav Gun in us. And Satav Gun over here really means noble qualities. Noble qualities of goodness, selflessness, kindness, compassion, all those qualities you are familiar with. Those are sattvic qualities. Do we really have those? Every time we visit the temple, do we see a little increase in the sattvic qualities in us? Or do we see the arrogance in us that, hey, I went to the temple? Sattvasya also means of the mind and intellect, as it is also made up of the sattvic aspect. Anything in the nature can be the sattvic, rajasic, or tamasic, or a mixture of all this. So sattva is our mind becoming sattvic. Is our behavior becoming sattvic? Is our language becoming sattvic? Are our emotions becoming sattvic? Or not? Because he is motivating us to improve ourselves. He wants to help us, and he wants us to help others. He wants us to gain more purity so that we can attain the truth. His motivating power is felt more keenly as tuning with him increases. Day by day, we should be more in tune with this. Instead of thinking that why was not I doing in the past, don't worry about that, cannot go in the past. That's why it's called a dead past. Right now, increase that tuning. And this can be seen in many ways. Sometimes we are in a dilemma. Intuitively, we are impelled to act in a right way. We are often guided through difficult situations. And we don't pay attention to it. But if we are in tune with God, we will listen to our inner voice, that intuitive voice, and do the right thing. The seekers pray each day. I'm sure you all do. Dhiyo yo naha prachodayat. How many times you say that in a day? We are saying, God, please, please enlighten my intellect. Dhiyo yo naha prachodayat. I don't want you to use this beautiful instrument you gave it to me only for the worldly pleasure. I want to use that powerful instrument which is called a dhi, buddhi, to move up, to connect with him. Some in the world instigate us to do wrong and pull us downwards. Some motivate us and push us forward. And some inspire us and uplift us. God is an eternal source of inspiration. The one who prompts us to attain the highest, not just only to do the best in this world, but the highest, so nirmalam prapti. That is the state of pure bliss. The scriptures point out that we often experience a state where this is free of all thoughts. We feel the bliss. Often devotees feel that. That is called a nirvikalp samadhi. There's no vikalp happening. There is a stillness in the mind. It could be momentary, but we got to pay attention. What are we feeling at that moment? But often we just ignore it. We don't want to recognize it. We just want to disown it. Sometimes it happens in the middle of a calamity or a tragic event. We are stunned into the thoughtless state. No vikalp at all. So moments of intense and extreme joy, fear, sorrow, physical pain, anger, or love can put us in a thoughtless state. For that brief moment, we are in touch with the Supreme. Even though we are not aware of it, but we are in touch with it. But if we have done a sadhana, proper sadhana, so those outer events can become a fortunate events for us to move up, elevate us up. Instead of going into sad mood, we can uplift us. Instead of feeling sorry for ourselves, we can really feel that all this is temporary. Why am I crying over this temporary? This is all perishable. You can use that properly also. And now we will see in the next verse next week, because it's quite different and difficult to conceive of God as infinite and all-pervasive, because we really don't know what infinite is, even though we use the word infinite. Can God be thought of as something nearer to our size? And that's what this Rishi is telling us in the next mantra, which is actually almost like a mantra from the Katha Upanishad. Some of you have done the Katha Upanishad with me. So we'll start with the verse number 13 next week. But this simple looking mantra, just remember what the deep implications are there. Indeed, this great Lord, the Purush, the prompter of Sattva, in order to help us attain the pure state, is the ruler, the light of consciousness, and immutable. How beautiful this verse is. Even in Sanskrit, it's not difficult if you want to memorize it. Let's stop the class here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Visheshyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you very much.